if the channel has its axial direction along x and transverse direction along y, and the flow is of course taking place in the xy plane in the fully developed flow uh, with only the u component, which is a function of y. We arrived at the following final equation, which I will write in a moment. 0 is equal to minus this one. So I think up to this we derived in the previous class. Doesn't matter whether gravity effect is there or not. I mean, technically, it could be such a wide channel. I mean, such a tall channel that the gravity effect might influence, but all that is included in this P star definition, which is P plus rho g into the height, but the gravity is automatically included. So I will of course solve this equation. It is I mean, it's quite straightforward. But before that, see, this has all come from a simplification of the Navier-Stokes equation. But what it actually means. So to understand that, we will take maybe a small rectangular element somewhere. I mean, it is not any specified location. So if you zoom it up, let us say that it is something like this of axial length dx. So if you have say the fluid flow is taking place in this direction, the wall will try to, so we are trying to draw a free body diagram of this. That means all the forces acting on this. Not all forces as such, but the forces which is important for the motion along this. So when the fluid is moving in the positive x, there is a resistance offered by the near wall region. Typically the fluid which is at the top of this element to keep it or to offer like a friction against the movement, and that is the shear force. So this is, you can say, tau is the local shear stress. Tau into dx into, say, 1 is the width of the element. So this is 1. Now, if that be the case, then the resultant drag here, see, if you consider this fluid element, the fluid on the top of it is slower than this, and because that is closer to the wall, and therefore that will try to resist its motion. On the other hand, the fluid which is at the below it, closer to the center line, that means that will try to move it forward because it is more away from the wall, so it has a greater speed. So that means that tau will be in the forward direction, but it will be, say, some tau plus d tau. It's a change because of the change in y. So let us say this is dy. D tau is the change in tau because of the change in y, and this into dx into 1. So this is the shear force. What about the pressure, force due to pressure? So here, let us put a different color. So you have a pressure distribution. So this force is, let us say this is P into dy into 1. And if this is P, this will be P plus dP into dy into 1. And dP is because of the change in x. Instead of P, we will call P star. It could include the piezometric effect, and which will bring all the symbols in line with what is written in this. Now try to understand the fully developed flow, as we are all seeing. So I'm just writing it separately here. Fully developed flow, if you see the governing equation, the Navier-Stokes equation, the left hand side becomes equal to 0. So customarily in the left hand side we are writing density into acceleration along x, and that is becoming 0. In the previous class I showed the simplification of why it is 0. So if it is 0, that means that all the forces are balanced, because if the forces are not balanced in the x direction, there will be a net acceleration. This is very straightforward. So all the forces are balanced. That means it is virtually like a fluid statics. So you have to keep in mind that fluid under, or rather, I mean, any material body, here the material body is a fluid element material, whatever is the any material body which is non-accelerating will have force all the forces balanced. Doesn't mean, I mean, doesn't necessarily has to be static. It could also be in uniform motion. So now, if we make a force balance, so resultant force along x equal to 0. I'm just trying to give you a simple physics which even a high school student can appreciate. So you have minus tau dx plus tau plus d tau dx plus p star dy minus p star plus dp star dy. This is equal to 0. I just written the forces here along x. We have not considered any body force along x, so only the surface forces. The normal forces on the surface are not important here. What is the normal force on these surfaces? I mean, clearly they are not important because they are not along x. But the normal forces on the lateral surfaces are important. We have only considered the pressure but not viscous normal stress. The reason is that there is no differential viscous normal stress along the two sides, and that will not give rise to any net force. So, in that way, what we can say is we can simply cancel certain things. Let us do it with some different color. So tau, this minus and plus will cancel. P star plus and minus cancel. So you will get d tau dx minus dp star dy equal to 0. So dp star dx minus dp star dx plus d tau dy is equal to 0. And because here u is a function of y only, so you can use this tau equal to mu du dy. There is no sort of dv dx etc. because v is 0, and that will give rise to this equation. So this is so important that on one side we are getting a training of how the Navier-Stokes equation can be applied to different problems. On the same time, and on the other hand, we are trying to understand the physics of the problem. That should not be lost just by the act of solving a partial differential equation. We have to keep, or ordinary differential equation. We have to keep in mind that this is a fluid mechanics course and not a ODE or PD solving course. So now let us try to solve this. And again, for solving this, we will get certain insights that we will use. So if you write the governing equation, so you will have d2 mu dy2 is equal to 1y mu dp star dx. Okay. So this is a function of y only, and this is a function of x only. Okay. So in that way, you have a function of y only is equal to a function of x only. So that equality becomes justified only if each is a constant. So that means, so let us say, I'm sorry, there was a noise. Am I correctly audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, if you integrate this, so this each becomes a constant. So now, if you integrate this, so you have du dy is equal to cy plus c1, and again integration will give you cy square by 2 plus c1y plus c2. Perhaps the easiest integration that all of us have ever come across. Now we will apply the boundary conditions. Because of the symmetry of the problem, see, you have to understand this thing carefully. The geometric symmetry is obvious. Say this is a half of the channel height h, this is half of the channel height. So with respect to center line, this is symmetry. But for having a complete symmetry, we have to ensure not only the symmetry in geometry but also symmetry in boundary condition. For example, if the boundary condition at this wall and the boundary condition at this wall would be different, then despite the geometric symmetry, the problem will be not overall symmetry. But here, at both the walls, you have no slip. We are not considering slip as a part of this. Those of you who are interested about the slip flow dynamics, you have to wait for the microfluidics course that I will teach in the next semester. So now, if you substitute the boundary conditions and see, because of symmetry, what will happen is at the x at y equal to 0, that is the center line, you will have du dy equal to 0 because u is maximum. Because of the symmetry, the maximum u takes place at the center line, and that is why du dy equal to 0. And at the wall, physically, at y equal to h, remember we are solving only half of the domain. You have u equal to 0. This is no slip. So let us quickly substitute this. Du dy, if you put du dy equal to 0 at y equal to 0, this will give you c1 equal to 0. And at y equal to h, if you put u equal to 0, so you have c equal to minus of this one, c h square. So summarily, what we get is u equal to just hold a moment. Just come back. Okay, so we continue so u equal to c by 2 into y square minus h square. The question is, what is this c? So you can refer to the equation that c was 1 by mu dp star dx. This is a constant which shows that p star is a linear function of x. P star is a linear function of x because this is constant. This is that c. But if you see the practical problems, sometimes you are not in a position to measure this pressure gradient. See, you can substitute this value provided you have an experimental measurement of the pressure gradient. That means you have to plot some, say, P star with X. So you have to plot some values from experiments, say, along the channel in the fully developed flow regime, say something like this, some data, and then you can with some error, these data will have some error. So, and then you can make a curve fit. It will be just like this straight line because dp star dx is constant, and from the slope of this straight line, by this experiment you can get dp star dx. So these are pressure measurements at certain axial locations, and this is a very straightforward device which has been existing from quite some time for pressure measurement in fluid flow. But still, in many cases, you will not like to have, even for analyzing such a simple channel flow, always pressure measurement at various locations along the axial direction. That will unnecessarily complicate your flow system. A easier thing to measure is the flow rate, because that doesn't require any specialized device. So what you can do is, say the fluid is flowing like this. At the exit, you can have a container, a beaker, in which you collect water over a period, water or whatever fluid, over a period of time, and you have certain measured lines in the beaker. So what will happen is that you will see measured value of this one, the volume which is collected over a period of time. So the average flow rate is nothing but the total volume divided by the time of experiment. This is only average. And I mean, although this appears to be like a junior high school word, but even in the highest level, if you consider it, it is not a wrong approach if you just consider the average Q and not instantaneous Q. And if it's a steady flow, then average Q and instantaneous Q will be the same. So in that way, now this is much easier to measure. So how do you relate this C with the flow rate? So to do that, what I will do is I will find out the flow rate first. So Q is equal to what? So flow rate is nothing but the integral of the velocity over the cross section, u dA. dA is dy into 1. So u is the normal component of velocity which is actually going through this space, and u into dy into 1. You can integrate it from 0 to h to get it for half of the channel, and then multiply it with 2 to get the full cross section. So 2 integral of u now c by 2 into y square minus a square, and dy 0 to h. So these two you can cancel. So c, this is h cube by 3 minus h cube minus 2c h cube by 3. Now we define something which is called as average velocity, which is u bar, let us say. Average is nothing but, say, if the same flow rate is maintained and if the velocity profile was uniform rather than varying with y, what would be that equivalent velocity? So it is simply if the velocity was uniform, that uniform velocity would be obtained by dividing the flow rate with the cross sectional area. So minus 2c h cube by 3 into the area of cross section is 2h into 1. So you can cancel these two and you can cancel one of the h, so this will be h square. So this means that c is equal to minus 3 u average by 2h. It's a very interesting thing. What you see here, that c is negative. Why c is negative? See, u average is the average velocity in the positive x direction, and we are considering the physics of the problem, considering that the flow is, assuming that the flow is along positive x, that means average velocity is positive. H square will be positive, so that means c will be negative. So what is c? This is c. So this is negative. So that means, so this slope that I have drawn here, it is justified from the mathematical analysis of the negative value of dp star dx. And it clearly tells the very intuitive thing that we learned from our early days of studies of fluid dynamics, that the fluid is flowing from higher pressure to lower pressure, or in this case higher piezometric pressure to lower piezometric pressure, where the height effect is embedded in the piezometric pressure. Okay. So now you can substitute this c as 3 by 2 u average by h square. So you will get u by u average is equal to 3 by 2. Sorry, 2 is not, 2 got cancelled, right? So 2 got cancelled. 2 got cancelled for both numerator and denominator. So, so what we get here is, so that minus 3 u bar by this h square, that is fine, and this 2 makes it 3 by 2. So 3 by 2 into 1 minus y square by y. So this is the velocity profile, fully developed laminar flow. We will see what happens with the turbulent flow, because you cannot have such a definition of description of velocity. I would not say definition. Definition is all right, but you cannot have such a description of velocity in a turbulent flow, and we will understand later on why. So clearly, this is the equation of a parabola. So that means if you make a sketch of how the velocity looks, so I can just erase this and make it clean, so that I can draw at least one velocity profile here across the width of the channel. So this is the velocity profile which is a function of y, which is of this parabolic shape. Now I will try to enter into a couple of issues. I mean, this is I mean, perhaps up to this is something which in whatever form all of you have studied in the undergraduate level. May not be with all the details that we are discussing, but more or less, at least the final result all of you know. Now, I will tell you something which I mean you may have thought of already, but is not so intuitive, and that non-intuitive thing comes from our natural way of extrapolating things, which we learn from things which are not beyond the which are not in the purview of what is being learned there. For example, invariably we make a comment that what comment we make is that fluid flows from high pressure, or say higher pressure, I should not say high, to lower. So this is something, I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong or whatever, but if you ask your conscience, you believe that this is what has been told at some point or the other in your classes. Not only that, you believe from your heart that this is something what in reality happens. Let us try to take an example. Let us say that we have a nozzle with sections 1 and section 2, just for simplicity, without anything else. We assume that the velocities are uniformly distributed over the cross section. If not, it is we can accommodate that in the discussion, but the main focus of discussion is not that. So it is possible that you are having a flow from 1 to 2, right? I mean that is very much possible. In fact, I mean just by driven by gravity it could be possible. So let us say this section is A1 area, this section is A2 area. So what you have, so let us try to write what is the energy at section 1. So energy per unit weight, let us write, that is just normalizing the energy. This is called as head. We have discussed it earlier. So it is P1 by rho g plus V1 square by 2g plus Z1. Here the energy is only mechanical energy. We are not talking about any electrical or other forms of effects which can be there. I mean, they can influence fluid flow definitely, but we are not bringing those into this purview. So you can see that around we had an exposure to Bernoulli's equation or equations of the form of Bernoulli's equation. The total energy in a flowing system would have the kinetic and the potential and the flow work or flow energy. We had discussed it earlier. If the velocity distribution is non-uniform over this, then the only factor that will change is that you can use the average velocity, but the kinetic energy based on the average velocity will not be the total kinetic energy with variable velocity into account. So you can use a correction factor, kinetic energy correction factor, to represent the kinetic energy. Our point, however, is not that. So what we will do is at section 1 this is true. At section 2 we will explain. So now, I mean, let us make certain simplifications. See, this is a so first of all, as per this figure, let us say this is the z direction and this is gravity. So z1 is greater than z2 for sure. So let us take some data, I mean just numbers, just to make us feel more comfortable. Say this is 10 meter and this is 9 meter. The kinetic energy correction factor depends on the distribution of velocity. If the distribution of velocity is similar, then these two may be equal. Now, out of average V1 and average V2, which one is more? So you can use your favorite A1 V1 equal to A2 V2. Let us assume that there is no compressibility effect. So because A2 is less than A1, you have V2 average greater than V1 average, just to ensure continuity. So this term, the second term, is more than the first term. So let us put up some value. Let us do one. Instead of this 10 and 9, I will put a bit more different thing to add different possibilities. So let us call it say 5 meter. Let us say these values. So we have to keep the V2 term more. So this is 7. Let us say this is 8 meter, and let us say this is 6 meter. These are just examples. I'm giving you examples so that you can just simply count like school arithmetic and get a feel. Okay. So all what I'm doing is I'm putting examples which are practically consistent, not practically unrealistic. So now we will have say this is head at 1, this is head at 2. So head at 1 is equal to head at 2 plus head loss. This is what we can simply say. The Bernoulli's equation doesn't accommodate any loss because it doesn't accommodate viscous effect. But there is always a loss of head in practice to overcome this is the energy required to overcome the viscous resistance. That is, the fluid has to do work against the viscous resistance, and that is appeared in the form of a loss which is positive. So that means H1 should be greater than H2. That is the other constraint physically. Greater than, equal to, in a sense that in a inviscid flow, H1 will be equal to H2, the loss will be 0. So now, if we consider that one, so these two together is what, 16, and these two together is 13, right? It could also be the so what okay, the other example I will come into subsequently, but there could be several possibilities of values of this. For example, so this is already 60, so this could be 0. I mean, just I'm saying 0 means atmospheric, and this is what should be the minimum of this. So this is 8 plus 5, 30. This is 10 plus 6, 60, 660. So even if loss is 0, this should be in totality minimum of 60. Otherwise, it would be less than 60. So let us say that there is some loss of say 1 meter. So this will be 50. So in that way, 8 plus 5, 30 plus 2, right? So 8 plus 5 plus 2, 15, and 10 plus 6, 16. It all satisfies all physics, and you can clearly see that this is an example where fluid is flowing from lower pressure to higher pressure. Okay. So this is number one. Now you can always say that, well, it is not the pressure that we were discussing earlier. We were discussing about the piezometric pressure, and the piezometric pressure includes this and this. So in totality, if you include this and this, that is the P star head. So that is 10 plus 0, that is 10. And the P star head here, this is 5 plus 2, 7. So in that way, you can say that, well, in the previous discussion, we were discussing about dP star dx, right? Not dP dx. So in that way, it is fine. It is still flowing in a direction from 1 to 2, from higher P star to lower P star. Okay. I completely admit what you are saying. Now, I will do something different. What I will do is I will just revert the design of this in the flow direction so that this becomes a diffuser. That means from small section to large section. So 1 and 2. Flow still in this direction. A1. Let us see what gets changed here. So let us clean it up so that we do not have any bias to what we discussed for the other case. So H1 in terms of the head will be what? Let us say P1 by rho g plus alpha 1 V1 square by 2g plus Z1, P2 by rho g plus alpha 2 V2 square by 2g plus Z. In this case, the area relationship has reversed. So the kinetic energy at 1 will be greater than kinetic energy at 2. How much greater, it depends on the area ratio. So let us take it as this is 10 meter and this is 5 meter. Physically realistic. Okay. Let us say Z1 is equal to what we say. Maybe this also 10 meter and let us say Z2 is 9 meter. Okay. So in this case, if we take say P1, so this is 0 meter and this has 2 meter. Okay. So I've come with a very typical example. So you can appreciate that this example doesn't violate any physical principle. In a sense that fluid is still flowing from, so this H1 is 10 plus 10, 20 meter, H2 is 9 plus 5, 14 plus 2, 16 meter. So it is flowing from higher head to lower head. At the smaller section, you have higher velocity, and one is located higher than 2. One may be exposed to atmosphere and 2 may be pressurized by some mechanism. So in that way, nothing of this actually violates, and this flow can actually take place physically. So now what is this P1 star head? That is 10 plus 0, that is 10 meter. And what is this P2 star head? This is 9 plus 2, this is 11 meter. So now I have defeated your possible argument by calculating or by coming up with a situation where the piezometric head itself is such that fluid is flowing from lower piezometric head or lower piezometric pressure to higher piezometric pressure. So summarily, fluid flows from higher pressure to lower pressure, either this pressure or piezometric pressure. This need not be true for all cases. Please put this up in your mind, because this is something which uh, has become like a bread and butter common sense to everybody, and this bread and butter common sense is wrong. So what we can say out of this is the conclusion that we should not make a bias in our statement by saying fluid flows from higher pressure to lower pressure or higher piezometric pressure to lower piezometric pressure. We can simply say that fluid flows from higher head to lower head. That's all. And in case of no viscous effect, these two heads will be equal. Okay. So the other point, so this is something you can clearly, so now you may say that this contradicts with what we have discussed in the parallel plate channel context, but you should not mix up that with this one, because that was a constant cross sectional area problem and this is a variable cross section, and therefore we should not mix up the mathematical and physical aspects of that problem with this problem. Now I will come to a situation which is a bit more practical than the parallel plate channel, that a general rectangular channel. It means that you have a channel like this, I mean a cross section like this, the channel is axially this way. So axial direction is still x. The cross section, so this is y, this is z, and this is x. So earlier it was xy plane, but now this the z direction is also important. So let us say that along the y direction you have this dimensions as this is a and this is a, just like h, and along the z direction similarly it is b and this is b. This is the new dimensionality added in the parallel plate channel problem. B is much greater than a, but in this case it need not necessarily be, and the channel is just a rectangular cross section. So the only difference here would be that you will have now u as a function of both y and z, not just y, not just z. So in the Navier-Stokes equation, I mean you can easily look into this. So you will have 0 is equal to minus dp star dx, that is all right, plus mu. Now it will be this both the terms in the viscous stress. In the parallel plate channel, no question of z was there, so it was just d2u dy2. So now it will be both y and z derivative for the shear stress because of the dependence of u on z. So this equation, with this slight adaptation, you see that the simple analytical solution as we presented in the previous case, that is not possible. So what we should do? Now I will tell you an engineering approach, and today we will run out of time, so possibly in the next class we will talk about a more rigorous mathematical approach, and we will see when these two approaches agree and when these two approaches do not agree. So a practical engineering approach, see, from the learning of the parallel plate channel, so we'll call it an approximate solution instead of calling it engineering approach, because it could be used by anybody, not necessarily engineering application, with a rider that this is approximate solution. Approximate solution. So from the learning of the parallel plate channel, we could see that that was u by U average is 3 by 2 into 1 minus y square by a square. So at least we found that this was giving rise to a y square type of a variation. Right? Similarly, this would give a z square type of variation if there is no bias between the two directions, and there should not be any bias because the both are transverse to the main flow direction. So in that way, so that is number one. So you will be related to something into some y square related function, z and also z square related function. On the top of that, it should satisfy the boundary condition that at y equal to plus or minus a and z is equal to plus or minus b, the velocity u has to be 0 by no slip boundary. So with that, you can you can choose u approximate as some k into y square minus a square into z square minus b square. So this is just a clever act with a motivation. Number one, to consider or to march to the limiting conditions of the parallel plate channel when the z dependence is not there or y dependence is not there. Respectfully or respectively, they will get back to their corresponding parabolic variations, and they will also satisfy the boundary condition that y equal to plus minus a and z equal to plus minus b, the velocities. So all it will need is the choice of k that will satisfy this boundary condition, this governing condition. So we can find out what is the derivative of u with respect to y. So this is k into 2y into z square minus b square. We will make another derivative just for this term. This is k into z square minus b square. Similarly, this will be now k into y square minus a square, 2k. So if you try to forcefully substitute or forcefully satisfy the governing equation, let us see what happens. So you have this one, sorry. This one as this one as mu into 2k into y square minus this one a square plus z square minus b square. Okay. Clearly, I mean, this will not satisfy this equation because this is a function of x. Here somehow y, z, all those things are appearing. So that means that clearly the approximate solution is definitely approximate because it is not satisfying the governing equation. But what we can do is that we can try to make sure that although locally this is not satisfied, in an integral sense this is satisfied over the integrated over the cross section. That is overall a force balance is satisfied. So that means if we integrate it with respect to y and z, let's see, double integral of y and z. So y is equal to sort of 0 to a, and z is equal to 0 to b. I mean, these are all half of the domain. So maybe this 1/4 of the section. This is equal to minus dp star dx into integrated over all this, so it will become a into b. Okay. So this is a overall force balance over the cross section. Because local force balance is not getting satisfied, we are trying our best to make it consistent so that overall force balance is satisfied. So now what we can do, it's a very simple exercise, that this is something what we substitute as this, and then do the double integration. First with respect to y and then with respect to x. So that will give you a value of k in terms of dp star dx. And that will complete the description of the approximate solution. So very easy to do, but the question is how accurate is this? What we have done is no, we have satisfied the boundary conditions, we have satisfied the governing equation not locally but in an integral sense, integrated over the entire section. So how accurate is this is doubtful and needs to be assessed by a solution method which is mathematically much more rigorous and not no, just intuitive in that sense. We'll do that in the next class, and let us stop here for today's class. So I'm just sort of unsharing my writing pad, and you can put up your questions if you have any questions. If not, we will close the class today and continue tomorrow. But if you have questions, you can definitely ask. So nowadays in the class, when I say that if you have questions, I normally see nobody asking questions. So it means two things. One is that there is absolute clarity on what I am saying, and it is 100% conveyed to you. So as a teacher, it is a delight to have such a feeling. The other possibility could be that it is so useless and irrelevant that you are not having any sort of interest in putting up any question. These are two limiting cases. The practical thing can be in between these two, but whatever it is, as I said, that I would never mind if you put up questions. They may appear to be silly, but the people who are not putting up those questions and keeping those doubts in their minds are much more silly than those who are actually exposing their doubts to others. So in that way, I don't mind a so-called silly question. I often, even after being so much of senior in teaching these kind of courses, I confront myself with so many of these kind of silly questions, which I do not also have a good answer on. So, it is okay if you have questions. If you don't have, it is okay. That is also okay. But just don't hesitate because of any stigma. If you have a doubt, you can just put up.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, for these two topics, parallel plate channel and a rectangular channel, which book we can prefer?
Parallel plate channel is there in all undergraduate textbooks of fluid mechanics. For the rectangular channel, you can refer to any book on viscous flows. For example, there is a book on viscous flows authored by Frank White, W-H-I-T-E, White. Okay, so that is a book on viscous flows. So there you will get this. Undergraduate textbook, you will not get the rectangular channel solution, but you will get the parallel plate channel for all in all our undergraduate textbooks.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay then, so let us close this class now and we will continue tomorrow.